Hello and welcome to Author Talk. I'm James Willett, and today we are joined by none other than Rose Fairchild. She has recently released a debut novel, so we're going to be talking about all of that jazz. And of course, she has also released a few short stories as well. So we're going to talk about the process that she's gone through for that. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, James. I appreciate being here and getting to talk with you today.
You're very welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your debut novel so that way the viewers know what it is you write and, of course, what your debut is all about?
Okay, well, it's called A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow. It's an adult dark fantasy that I lovingly refer to as fairy smut. Um, it features a lot of moral grayness. It does have some trigger warnings. It has imprisonment, bondage, degradation, non-consensual sex, blood, narcissism, gaslighting, spider characters for those with arachnophobia, and multiple scenes of explicit sex. So it does have in the beginning a fairly lengthy trigger warning there. So
I'd imagine so. Yeah, that's an interesting list for people to read through. So, what drew you to do dark fantasy? Because dark fantasy has to be one of the most popular genres today. I feel like the more authors that I talk to, the more people that are writing it. What drew you to dark romance?
I think that it kind of all goes back to my love of vampires, which began in first grade. Um, for whatever reason, I wandered over to the YA section in the school library and found a book on vampires. And when I took it to the front, the librarian looked at me kind of like this and she said, "Honey, are you sure you should be reading this?" And I was like, "Mm-hmm." And she let me take it and I just kept renewing it. I mean, I just started reading. So I kept renewing it until I got through it. And like from there, I absolutely loved everything dark fantasy, vampires, all of it. So
That's
I
interesting that you'd mention that. Vampires, I used to love vampires and vampire stories and all that stuff. So I totally get what drew you there.
yeah, it's still one of my favorite things. I know they kind of like go in and out of fashion, but not for me. They're always like one of my mainstays.
Yeah. So what is so we know you trigger warnings, but what's actually what's your story all about?
Okay, so we start with Aura, who is a young Fae female whose powers exposing true colors with her touch. So we find her at the beginning of the story having fled fairy for the human realm to escape the changes her magic has caused and the discord that arises from that, or that she perceives to arise from that. Um, and while on the run, she meets this male who he always seems to know too much. He always seems to be able to find her and kind of can't leave her alone. Um, and she's as drawn to him as he is to her. And so they end up having this little tryst. And her magic again kind of messes things up and she takes off again. Um, Shortly thereafter, she's found by another male who he's kind of like very dominant. You can tell he's dangerous. He's very charming. Um, and he persuades her to come back to his home and says he's going to help her hide, basically. Um, and he ends up sending her off on this mission to a foreign court where she's sort of being used as a spy. And she meets another piece of her past and learns basically that their fate lies in her hands. And so, caught between these two males, she's fighting for acceptance and love and family, both blood and found, her own freedom and her own inner light as well. And that's the gist of it.
That sounds really complex and really interesting. I like the fact that you've got like a magic system in there as well. Is it like something that you have made from scratch, or are you borrowing someone else's magic system? How does that kind of work within your book? Because I think that, especially fantasy, magic systems as a writer can be quite difficult to navigate.
Um, I it's interesting to me how it all came to me because like they all have rules, of course, because it's magic systems, but I feel like each fairy, each fae in the story kind of has its own mini magic system.
Okay.
So I don't think I borrowed it from someone else. I think I've kind of done it all from scratch. I am 100% a pantser, so I just go down the rabbit hole and follow them and see what happens. And I
That's
kind of learn
interesting.
what they do. So yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So how do you go about adding the dark romance side of it to a fantasy book? I mean, if you was to remove all of the smut, it sounds like you have a very typical fantasy book there. Like what kind of comes first to you? Is it the fantasy side to you, or is it the connections between the characters?
It's well, the characters are always first for me. So I usually meet one, and then the story starts building around them. I feel like I kind of just like let them start wandering around in my brain and dropping little story hints as they go, and I just start writing. And while they're journeying through my brain, I start meeting the other characters, and the story builds that way. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, something about how my brain works that even if I try to leave out the darkness or the smuttiness, it just ends up finding its way in anyway.
That's it. Okay, that's cool. What was your main inspiration for your main character in this book?
So my main inspiration, okay, well, uh, there's I think a lot of myself in this main character, not 100%, but a lot of like
Hmm.
my insecurities and that, because she is a rather insecure character. Um, and aside from that, I was doing something mundane like washing dishes one day, and I just got this little flash of an image of a fairy with her wings kind of drooping, and she had white hair, and she was just looking down at her hands, and there were colors dripping out of her hands. So that
Okay.
was how she was born in my mind. And I just started asking questions like, why would she be dripping colors? What, why would that be happening? What would that do? And that's how this true colors thing came about. Um, so yeah, so between me and my insecurities and then this true colors thing, that's how she was born.
That's really interesting. I think what's also interesting there is that you said obviously this is your debut novel, and of course you've drawn inspiration from yourself as well. Putting yourself in that book slightly. I think that we all do that as authors, especially first-time authors. That's something I done myself in my first book. I was kind of like, write what you know, and you can't know anyone else better than yourself, right?
Yes, that's true.
So also, you said you're a pantser rather than a planner. Do you have any plan going into your books at all, or you literally just, head down typing?
So I usually start writing first, and then as I go along, I have a loose framework of how I think things should go. Now,
Okay.
the characters don't always behave and do what I think should happen. So sometimes I have to pivot. But
Those pesky
I,
characters, eh?
yeah, they just do what they want anyway. Um, so I do tend to, as I go along, try to form an idea of kind of like when I want certain things to happen, or um, how I want it to happen. And it's just, if it happens that way, great. If it doesn't, well, I just adjust.
Okay, fair enough. And this is self-published, correct?
Yes.
Why was self-publishing the direction that you went over, say, traditional publishing?
Um, well, this is not the first book that I have written. I've written several. The last one I wrote before this one is called Hex and Healer, and I queried that for quite a while actually. And I did get some agent interest, but everything was always, it's not the right time. It's not quite right. It's not quite right. And I finally just got essentially tired of waiting for someone else to validate me and my stories and for it to be the
Hmm.
right time. Like, they're what speaks to me, and I can't be the only one out there who likes this kind of thing. So I figured I'll put it out there and hopefully its audience will find it and make some people happy.
So are you still planning to publish those books you queried, or are you still trying to query them?
That one I'm going to self-publish that one also. This A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow, for whatever reason, just completely took me over. I was
Yeah.
actually in the middle of another story when that one came up, and I ditched the other story for this one. I've now, already got ideas going for other things for this universe.
So
So
there's gonna be more. This isn't one and done.
it is not one and done. It does end in a way that it could be, like if, but no, I've actually already written book two. First
Oh,
draft done. I have it. It's actually on my Patreon. That's where I put it. I do every Monday and Friday a chapter, which pushes me to keep going. And I have a few subscribers who, the comments and their interest and excitement and questions kind of keep me going as well. Because otherwise, I tend to imposter syndrome kicks in, and I'll let it slide for a while. So having them to keep me going, I'm finishing stories much faster than I ever have, and with a lot more passion than I've ever had.
that's really interesting. I think having that constant input where you've got readers or you've got people that want to provide input as you're going along, that can be really useful. I don't know if I could use that because I'll write 40,000 words. And then by the time I get to the end of that, I have to go back to the beginning and correct all the changes I've already made.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe that's the benefit of just tumbling down the rabbit hole and following my characters.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I tend to, if I make changes like for A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow, I actually originally had a couple more chapters in the beginning, but they ended up feeling not necessary by the time I got there. So I just tweaked it. I incorporated a few details into a later chapter and started there instead.
Hmm.
So
What
it's,
did you find most difficult about self-publishing versus what you found the easiest? Because they're very
the
different things, aren't they?
Yes, they are. The easiest for me is the writing. I love the writing. I tend to be fully immersed when I'm writing. I see it, I feel it, I hear it, I smell it. It's all right in front of me.
Hmm.
Um, the hardest for me is marketing. Am not I don't enjoy talking about myself, and I don't. There's Aura talking from my story, the insecurities. Um, and when someone comes up and is like, "Oh, you wrote a book. What's it about?" I'm like, so I I'm like the deer in headlights, and I can't. It's very hard for me to get the idea across when I haven't thought about it in advance.
So
Uh,
is that with the whole not knowing what to say, is that because you don't know where to start because of your subject matter, because it's a little bit more risque than your general, or is it a case of you'd never want to reveal too much?
I would say it's a little of both. It does
Okay.
depend on the person. Um, but a lot of it is, yeah, I don't want to give away too much. And don't, I'm also worried about giving too little so that it just sounds flat and boring because I'm trying not to give anything away.
You see,
Um,
I hate marketing myself, hate marketing. I find it the hardest part of being a self-published author. But I know even if you're traditionally published, you have to market as well. So it's something I guess we're all going to have to learn.
yep, I'm trying. I do feel like having an online community for a while has been very helpful, because between flash fictions and some of my shorts, I had readers who already were familiar with my work and were interested in following along as I was talking about the story and providing little visual teasers and little snippets. So I did have, a few people who were already interested, and that's helpful. And I have to tell you, they talk about my book far better than I ever could. So that's also very helpful.
That's good. Like screenshot that and just post it around.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, you are awesome. Yes, thank you. That's perfect.
I like it. So you mentioned that you've done some short stories beforehand. What kind of short stories have you done? Where can we find them? Who have you worked with?
Okay. So I have some on my website that
Which
are
is?
rosejfairchild.com. So they are early, so they're not like super refined, but if you want a quick sneak peek, there's some poetry on there, there's some short stories on there. Because poetry was my first love. So
That's
it
interesting.
expanded into my short stories and then novels. Um, I have my original acceptance for a short story was with Fairchild Publishing, and it was this weird spin on the Tooth Fairy.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, the teeth are like a drug almost. And so
That's
it's
cool.
again
That's interesting.
a dark perspective on the Tooth Fairy. Um, so Fairchild Publishing has a couple, again, very old, so they're not as refined. Um, and then I did a few with Malarkey's Imagine Omnibus, which is through Sulk Media. And 3, 4, I have another one of those coming up also. And they're, again, dark, a lot of feminine rage. And
Okay.
he does, Ross Young of Sulk Media tries to keep the smutty piece down. So it's in there because I can't help it. And he was gracious enough to take it anyway.
Okay.
Um, but it's a little less. It's more, the darkness.
So
And
maybe for people new to you, they could start there and work their way
yeah,
up.
that was a better place to maybe get the toes wet. Yeah, and then I just did one in Deranged Minds
Deranged Minds. Yeah, that's right.
with
With
you.
me. Yeah.
And so those are really where my short stories live at the moment. I had another one accepted, but I still don't think it's published, and it's been like 2 years. They said they were just
Oh,
working this anthology, so I don't think it has come through yet. And that was one where I dug my fingers into several different phobias and tried to bring a bunch of phobias out in this story. And I think I did a decent job. So I hope
well,
it
hopefully
comes.
we see it soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it comes out eventually.
Fair enough. Do you have any more short stories planned coming out? I know you said you got a few books planned coming up as well.
Yes. So I do have, there's a Malarkey's Imagine Omnibus coming out, I think around Halloween time.
Hmm.
Um, and
And
I will
what's that
have,
about?
okay, so that one, that anthology, the theme is basically orbs. So
Okay.
my, in particular, I'm focusing on a will-o'-the-wisp theme.
Okay.
Um, and, but playing on other mythology that's related to the will-o'-the-wisp as well. Just to make it extra freaky, basically.
Cool.
Yeah. And then I
Uh,
think I plan also on doing more Deranged Minds down the road too, but I have to pace myself. I tend to take on too many things at once and then end up just reeling from how much I'm trying to get done at once.
yeah, so I think they've got another two planned for this year, haven't they? One in Halloween, I believe, and then one for Christmas too. So we should see or hear some more about that on this channel soon.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for wannabe authors or people maybe early on in an author career or just happen to be watching at the moment?
Yes. First of all, just write. As most people say, you have to write. And if you're passionate about it, if it means something to you, keep going. At first, you're going to think it's amazing probably, and other people are going to tell you it's no good and you should stop. Don't stop. Keep going if it means something to you, and find people who can see what you're doing and support it and give you feedback in a kind way, because if not, I mean, it can completely destroy your confidence. And finding the right audience essentially is finding that community, but you'll get so much more valuable feedback, and you'll probably hit some bumps along the way. If you get knocked down for a few days, that's okay. but get back up and keep going, because it will get better. You will get better, and you will find the people your stories resonate with. And it's so worth it when you do.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there are a lot of people that enjoy reading, say, raw work. So there's lots of people that's willing to try new authors, and I think it's really important to, when you've written something, to get someone other than maybe friends or family to read it, because they're going to be too kind and they're emotionally connected to you as well. So that's not necessarily the advice or opinions you need.
Exactly. And some of them, truthfully, because they're close to you, can be the meanest.
Yeah,
So
that's true too.
I ran into that at one point. So yeah, just find people, not friends or family, who you trust and resonate with at least the idea of what you're doing for feedback.
Now, you mentioned that marketing you find the hardest, and I agree with you. I'm there with you. But if you have to give advice on marketing, what have you learned that would help someone today? What's your go-to?
My go-to, okay, a couple things. I haven't tried running any ads yet, so I have zero input on that. But again, that online community, if you do have friends and family, like my mother-in-law was very sending, when my story came out, sending it to everyone, going, look at this, please support. You know, she was a good driving force, like pushing my story out there, because she wants me to do well too, and she thinks that I'm a really good writer. But the online community, truly, I have found so much love and support there. And people sharing my book, people buying extras of my book to put in little free libraries. So little free libraries are another good resource. I have
It's more
actually,
people reading.
yes, I have actually just started putting them in little free libraries myself, and I include a little note to the reader in the front, and just saying, like, I hope you feel seen in my story, and I hope it brings you some joy, some escape. And if you enjoy it, please leave a review, because it'll help boost my book, baby. I would appreciate it. Thank you, and stay magical, kind of thing.
That's cute.
And just, because I would like to find that from an author, but
Yeah.
and it sort of puts that little nudge there to, like, hopefully if you like this, you'll help me out a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. So what platforms do you use when it comes to social media? Because there is a lot to choose from. What do you recommend? What's your favorites? What's the one that you find the least helpful with in 2024?
Okay. So Instagram is my first and favorite home for my author stuff. I'm also on TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook, YouTube. Um, but I don't really get any engagement anywhere besides Instagram, probably because I'm not on there enough.
Okay.
But I get frustrated with it and trying to keep up with all of them. So I'm most comfortable on Instagram. It was the first one I dove into. So I do have stuff on those others, but it's I just don't get the interaction I do on Instagram.
Yeah, I find, I mean, I'm on pretty much everything the same as you. I think for me personally, Facebook's the least useful when it comes to uh, the writers community. But yeah, I think trying to keep up with all of the platforms you're on can be difficult. I tend to try to, if I'm going to post on one, I'll try and post on several of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Not always the same content, but roughly similar kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think least useful for me now, anyway, not in the past. I think now the least useful for me is Twitter. Um, I used to get
Yeah.
some on there, but since it switched over to X, there's pretty much nothing.
I like using Twitter for information more. I mean, I have a gaming channel as well, so I'm always after this or that in, information wise. But I think that a upcoming one, which I don't think gets spoken about enough, would be Discord. Discord is a great place to build a community and to have people, talking about you and your work and that kind of thing. May need to sort one of that out for potential readers.
Okay, well, I'll have to. The only thing I use Discord for is a group message so far. So,
Talking
um,
to with the deranged minds. Yeah.
yeah. So I will have to keep that in mind and maybe dig a little deeper on that one. I get a little nervous about new social media, but
I think
like failing at the beginning of Discord. So, um,
I think the other thing is that trying to keep up with the amount of links that you've got, it becomes a bit much after a while, doesn't it?
yes, it does. Which reminds me, I probably should add maybe Discord to my link tree, which is how I keep track of my links, is in a link tree.
Yeah, a lot of people use Linktree. A lot of people do. Circling back around to your book really quickly, your cover, I really like it. Nice and eye-popping. Who designed the cover?
Actually, I did. I used, it was a light photography image that was on Pixabay, and I sort of obviously had to like mess with it a little bit to make it work for the cover. And I used the KDP cover calculator
Okay.
to get my proportions right and where my lines should be and everything. And then a Photoshop adjacent program called GIMP, because it's free and
Okay.
I don't have Photoshop. So between those three things, I ended up making the cover and being pretty happy with it.
That's awesome. And I also think that's kind of like a testament to, self-published authors and how many hats they have to wear. Now you're a cover designer as well. So
Yeah, it was tricky. The GIMP program, I probably made up a few new curse words while working with that one. Oh,
yeah, I believe you.
yeah.
So before we go, where can people best find you if they want to contact you, if they want to look at your work, if they're, just interested in you in general? Where is the best place to get to you?
Either my website, which is again rosejfairchild.com, or on Instagram. My handle is rosejfairchild. And if you're looking for A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow, that would be on Amazon. It's available as an ebook, a paperback, and it's also, at least for now, in Kindle Unlimited. So that's my best places.
That's really cool though that it's available on Kindle Unlimited. So if people, if the people are a part of that, they can just download your book and start reading, and get a sample of your work for free, essentially.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the time. And don't forget, guys, if you've enjoyed what you've watched, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. But that's it for this episode. We'll catch you later.